and he was speaking to the consequences of the leaks by Snowden and how Snowden's leaks have harmed our national security. And he's the DIA chief. And he was testifying before Congress last week. And I just wanted to get your thoughts because we've mentioned this in the past. And again, I want to speak to people who say, hey, America's spying on us and all that. And we've gone through that. And obviously you know where I am. I believe that he betrayed our country, period. There are no other ways to do it. That's Crane Durham speaking. I realize you disagree with me on that. Many of you. That's great. I appreciate it. But as more information comes out, I think what the ledger will show is a clear sense of if somebody was genuinely trying to protect America and expose a program they were concerned about in Americans being spied on, they would not have behaved in this manner. And that certainly is part of this clip. Roll it.
The strongest the strongest word that I can use to describe how bad this is this has caused grave damage to our national security. I think another way to address your question is what are the costs that we are going to incur because of the scale and the scope of what has been taken by Snowden. And I won't put a dollar figure, but I know that the scale or the cost to our nation, obviously in treasure, in capabilities that are going to have to be examined, re-examined, and potentially adjusted. But I think that the greatest cost that is unknown today, but we will likely face, is the cost in human lives on tomorrow's battlefield, or in some place where we will put our military forces, when we ask them to go into harm's way. And I think that's the greatest cost that we face with the disclosures that have been presented so far. And like I said, the strongest word that I can use is this has caused grave damage to our national security.
Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, Director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, before the Senate Select Committee last week on intelligence. Tell me, Ryan, is that consistent with what you've learned about these leaks?
Yes, it is consistent. I think that Edward Snowden is, frankly, a serial exaggerator, an attention seeker. I don't think he's truthful, and I do think he betrayed the country. But what's important for listeners to understand about that clip is that the government is not talk radio in terms of how they dramatize things. It's always, you try and keep your tone down. When there's damage to American national security, you portray strength and you try and downplay the damage that has been done. And he threw out all of that. That was the strongest language in regards to a national security breach that I can think of in recent memory or in my memory at all. So on a 1 to 10 scale, the level of panic and concern that you just heard in that clip is at a 10.
Tell me, when we have had a lot of smoke in the sense of people making allegations and speculating, I love how Andrew C. McCarthy opened up an article, and I've read it before, almost verbatim on air, much like I do with your work sometimes. But it had to do with the fact that it was talking about how the NSA is not spying on you. The NSA doesn't have the time to do that. There's a process, and there are checks within the system, and every system will have setbacks, and there are ways to deal with this legislatively, certainly with people and understanding third-party data, because things have changed since 1979. Nonetheless, the allegation gets out there that lie makes it halfway around the world before the truth gets its shoes on. And Samuel Clemens, by the way, I think that's who did that. Mark Twain. And my question is, when you hear the concern and his voice, and you just highlighted the fact that it's not talk radio, they're not downplaying things. And incidentally, my position and quite frankly your position, and we've had this conversation before, not popular. in the land of general talk radio. A lot of people, I mean, politicians are making jokes about it and the whole thing. And I get the jokes, but I don't think it's responsible, because what's happening is they're conflating scandals under Obama. However somebody wants to look at President Obama, he has a history of not the administration, the record not lining up with the statements. I've called him a liar, and I've documented that. That said, when you do that, you do a real disservice to our overall national security, and there are real costs in that, because we're talking about our soldiers. Is that an overstatement?
No, I think it's right on, and I think that the political reaction to the NSA so-called scandal is really a microcosm of this problem of partisanship that we have in this country, where people are, instead of thinking critically, are taking their cues from blogs, from political leaders that they admire, and they view their political party that they belong to as essentially the football team that you take direction from, and you just follow that lead because you want your team to win. If this was happening under the Bush administration, and actually it was, but if it was revealed, you'd have had Democrats going absolutely crazy saying that Bush is the next Stalin. Now you're having it happen under Obama, and you have most Republicans making it sound like Obama is going through all of your private telephone records to find out who you voted for, and he's going to audit you if you didn't vote for him.
Mm-hmm. And the fact is, when we look at the IRS and people speaking up, you do have a pattern there. But when it comes to the program of the NSA, I played a clip, and I know you sat through it, and it's like, Ryan, I can only imagine what it does to you. You're a national security expert. You hear these clips. Sometimes you're right there. But Bush said something along the lines in 2006, and maybe it was 2008, but it was on the program, and he said to Matt Lauer, so I think it was 2006, about this. And he was like, look, my job is to protect the American people. It will matter not, Matt, when you expose all these programs, stop them, the next attack, because people will be pointing fingers. Why didn't you do something? And he spoke to these programs, so I understand the political lens, but also I think there's been a terrible ineptness in the way of the response from our government with this. And I know you're recognizing the politicians, but also as people coming out, and specifically our president, explaining it to the American people, because there are legitimate concerns when you hear something and it's not rebutted. It's not, hey, wait a second, there's, like Mark Thiessen wrote, or John Yoo, people that have written to McCarthy, what you have done in the course of being a journalist, you understand this better than anybody. You have to go, and there has to be another side. When you're looking for the other side for this, a lot of people seem to be saying, I'm just not going to touch it. Your thoughts?
Right. Yeah, I agree, because it's political football. You have individuals like Senator Rand Paul that go out there and they characterize this program in the worst possible terms, because now they're playing to public opinion. And who knows, maybe they actually believe what they're saying, but that's based on their own misconceptions, and other people take cue from what they're saying. But on a broader level, and it's a little off topic, this is why I wish there were no political parties. This is why I wish that George Washington's advice about never establishing political parties was followed, because it causes this groupthink, this football game type thinking, where it's my team against your team. Oh, good, there's a criticism against your team. That gives points for my side. And that identification with political party is really damaging the education and the politics of this country.
And from that statement, I think it all goes to people desiring the truth. And I know, and I'm saying this, Ryan, because I realize you know this, but as we're having this conversation, I want people to know who have questions and are concerned about the NSA program. I don't discount that. I'm not saying that they're responding this way merely for the political reasons. But when you have politicians engaging in this, and at times they have a record that they know better, like Wyden did when he asked Clapper that question. That was a report. He asked Clapper that question before in a hearing. He knew the answer. Why on earth did he ask him the question during the hearing? I'm not a fan of Clapper, but why would you do that? See, that concerns me.
It's right. It's a political trap. And let me say, that even though I'm defending the NSA, I understand some of the concerns about the FISA court and how the NSA is self-policing. And so if you want to reform the program, by all means, go ahead. There's some of these proposed reforms that I'm comfortable with.
Yeah.
But have the conversation based on reform and not on panic-driven perceptions of what the NSA is doing.
Well said. Okay, remaining time, because Crane went off on this tangent but felt it was necessary. And again, why we don't really debate this right now, I'm looking to have a debate, is because we're still learning more about it. And to have a debate, you got to have a threshold of verifying. And that's important to have an informed debate. That all said, Ryan, Syria, aspirations of Syrian terrorists or Syrian groups that are fighting within the civil war there, attacking the United States. That was mentioned last week in these hearings. Tell me, what do you know about this, and how serious is that?
It's very serious. Syria has essentially become the Afghanistan, what it was in the 1980s, where you have jihadists all around the world going to one central location for battle experience, recruiting, money, everything that they need. So Syria is truly frightening. But something really interesting happened, and it came out in the British press in recent days, which is that Western intelligence has confirmed that the Assad regime, even though it's fighting al-Qaeda, is actually assisting them in living in his country. And that really answered a question to me, because al-Qaeda operates from Iran, and they're from Iran. They're sending fighters into Syria to kill Iran's allies. And how does that make sense? Here's what the strategy is. Assad knows that he needs al-Qaeda to succeed among the rebels, because once al-Qaeda dominates the rebels, they're not going to get Western support. They're not going to get the support of the population, and he remains in power. And so it's a very sophisticated strategy that's meant to play upon how the West and the locals view the rebels.
And so bottom line, he's securing his own power and looking at the outcome of manipulating what he can, all with the goal, first and foremost, to remain in power.
Absolutely, and he's playing upon the perception that all of the rebels are al-Qaeda terrorists and radicals.
Well, I think we need to have another discussion on that later on this week, if possible, because I think
Sure.
you need to explain that to us, because we've had the conversation before, but when we are in the situation now where we are dealing with a solution and people are saying, well, we're fighting terrorists on either side, thugs or terrorists, there's the rest of the story. And Ryan, you do a great job in giving us the rest of the story and nothing but truth. Thank you so much, man. Great to be with you.
Thank you, Crane.
Take care. Ryan Morrow, Clarion Project, clarionproject.org. On the flip side, we'll take some more of your phone calls. And, oh, yeah, global warming back in the news. Why and how? AFR Talk.